This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices steadied on Friday amid uncertainty surrounding a potential peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, with prices gaining on the week for the first time in 3 weeks. Brent crude futures settled up 6 cents or 0.09% to $67.73. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude futures settled up 14 cents or 0.22% to $63.66. Both contracts gained more than 1% in the previous session. Brent gained 2.9% this week while WTI rose 1.4%. Everyone is waiting for President Trump's next step, said UBS commodity analyst Giovanni Stanovo. Over the coming days, it seems nothing will happen, he added.
US liquefied natural gas exports will soar by roughly 10% a year through 2030 as energy firms double their LNG production capacity, according to analysts, providing a shot in the arm to the country's maturing shale industry, which has seen growth slow and costs rise. The US is the world's largest oil and natural gas producer, but many of its best drilling locations have been tapped. While oil production is expected to plateau or fall in coming months, gas remains a bright spot for the industry thanks primarily to the country's booming exports. US LNG exports are on track to soar from a record 11.9 billion cubic feet per day in 2024 to 21.5 BCFD in 2030, according to a US Energy Information Administration outlook.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency on Friday approved most of its backlog of requests by small oil refineries for biofuel law exemptions, raising concerns among biofuels advocates over a potential hit to demand. The approvals are also a mixed blessing for the cohort of small U.S. refiners who have argued for years they are hurt financially by the federal mandate to blend biofuels like ethanol into the country's fuel supply. Many of their requests have now become so old that the waivers they have secured are worthless. The EPA said in its announcement that it granted 63 small refiner requests in full, 77 in part, and denied just 28, clearing nearly all of the 204 that had accumulated since 2016 amid a decade of legal and political wrangling.
The Trump administration on Thursday issued more Iran-related sanctions, targeting 13 entities based in Hong Kong, China, the United Arab Emirates and the Marshall Islands, as well as 8 vessels, the U.S. Treasury Department said. The measures cover Greek national Antonios Margaritas and his network of companies and vessels that Treasury said was involved in transporting Iranian oil exports in violation of sanctions. Treasury also designated Aries Shipping Limited in Hong Kong, Comfort Management in the Marshall Islands and Hong Kong Hangshan Shipping Limited in Hong Kong. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Copper prices rose for a third session on Friday after the U.S. central bank chief opened the door to interest rate cuts and as demand in top metals consumer China remained healthy. Benchmark 3-month copper on the London Metal Exchange was up 0.5% at $9,777 a metric ton by 1620 GMT, after touching its highest since August 14 at $9,813.50. Friday's gains are still below a peak of $10,020.50 touched on July 2, its strongest in more than 3 months. Prices extended gains after U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell pointed to a possible rate cut at the central bank's September meeting but stopped short of committing to cutting interest rates.
The sharp jump in China's imports of rare earth ore from the United States in July was probably the final customs accounting of shipments from U.S. supplier MP Materials (MP)N. Data on Wednesday from the General Administration of Customs showed imports of rare earths ore from the U.S. surged to 4,719 metric tons in July after falling to zero in June, sparking market speculation over the source of the shipments. MP Materials, which owns the only U.S. rare earth mine, has long sent ore to China for its minority shareholder Shenghe Resources to process.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Chicago soybeans rose further on Friday to a 2-month peak as brisk weekly exports, hopes that China will revert to buying U.S. crops and a rally in soy oil offset supply pressure from favorable U.S. field conditions. Corn chopped up and down as the strong yield potential shown by a U.S. field tour curbed support from bumper weekly exports. Wheat also seesawed, but slipped from a 3-week high. The most active soybean contract on the Chicago Board of Trade settled 2.5 cents higher at $10.58 -1/2 per bushel after touching its highest level since June 23 at $10.59 1/2.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.